Hi there, it's James Arthur here. Hope you're doing really well. Now, Logic Pro X has got a really useful feature where you can import project settings from other existing projects. This can be really useful for a whole variety of reasons, but I'm going to take you through a few of my favorites and hopefully they'll be of use to you. Okay, let's have a look. If you like the video, please hit the like. If you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe. And of course, if you want some free stuff, there's a mailing list you can sign up to below. Let's move on to the main part of the video. Now, I'm going to start by showing you how useful this can be to import your settings from other existing projects into a new session. Now, why do you want to do this? Now, one of the main things would be that you're recording multiple tracks like an EP or an album, and you've already made a start on a first song and you want to bring some of those instruments or settings into the next song. Maybe you've set up a bunch of software instruments in the other song that you're going to be using in this next song, so you want to bring those over instead of having to add new instruments, recall presets, all of those sort of things. Now, I've got a fresh session here and I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing you want to do is go up to the browser. You can either click on the button up here or just hit F and it will take you there. Most of the time it's going to load up in your project browser here, but what you want to do is go to all files. Next, you need to find the project that you want to import the settings from. So I've prepared one from earlier, of course. Double click on that, and as soon as you do that, it's going to show you all of the tracks that you have in that project. As you can see, I've got a whole load in that project. We're not going to be bringing them all in. We're just going to bring in a few. Specifically, what I want to do is I want to bring in some software instrument tracks. In addition to that, I also want to bring in some of the buses that I've set up which have a few effects on. So this is a point where I can show you a little bit about how to do that and how to select the specific things that you want to bring. So, for example, we have Omnisphere here. I want to bring in that track there. As you can see, it's showing exactly what is on every track. So you can choose what you want to bring. I want to bring in this plugin itself. So plugins, click that, and it's going to be bringing in the plugin on the track. Now, next up, and this is where it gets a little bit more interesting, and we're not necessarily going to use all of these right now, but if this track was going to any sends, it isn't because it's grayed out at the moment, but if it was going to any sends, and you could click that, and it will set up the send for you as well. The IO is to do with the actual input and output settings, which we'll get to in the next part of the video. Keep bus number is directly to do with the send. So for example, if you've set up a send that's coming from that particular track and it's going into a delay, which is set up on an auxiliary track, and that's going through bus 1, if you choose to keep bus number, then it's going to keep that setting as well. So it's going to set it up under bus 1. That's all well and good to do if you're starting with a fresh session, but if you've already got lots of tracks in there and there's a chance that you might already have something using that bus, like bus 1, then maybe don't check that. Anyway, so what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to bring in Omnisphere. I want my contact as well, so I'm going to bring in that. And then this next one is a Logic drummer instrument that I set up with multiple outputs. So as you can see, this is the main one, and then these ones that follow in brackets are all the multiple outputs. Chances are we want all of those. So I'm going to do that. If you click that, click shift and highlight them all, it's going to get everything there. And of course, I want to bring in all the plugins. And as you can see on here now, there are loads of different plugins on it because I started to essentially mix them slightly to get them to fit into the track. So you've got a little list of all the plugins that are on there. Channel EQ, BX Console, I think that's might be just a gap. And Decapitator, and all of those are in there. Again, if you want to use the sends that might have been connected to it, you can bring those in too. And then going down on the bottom here, this is where all of your auxiliaries will be. So in this case, I'm going to just bring in that mono delay, and that's it for now. So I'm going to bring that in, and let's do IO, and let's do the keep bus number. Now, when you're happy that you want to bring all those in, at the bottom here, click add. Now, if we go back to the main track screen, you'll see it's imported these instruments and my multi-output drums, and we're just going to go to the mixer, and you'll notice it's got all of those in place with all of the plugins that I had set up on the channels previously. So now I can just carry on and start creating from where I left off on the next song. Super easy. Now, another really useful reason for using this feature can be if you're recording drums, for example. So you've just recorded one track of drums and you're moving on to the next track, and you want to keep all of those settings. You want to keep all of the routing, you want to keep all of the track names, and you want to keep all of the buses, including like the Q sends, which should go into headphone outputs. Maybe you want to keep all of those as well. So this is where you'd also check the track IO option as well. So let's have a look. Go back to the same place, the file browser, all files. I'm going to go to a different session. Here's one I prepared earlier. And as you can see, we previously recorded all of those tracks. 10 tracks of drums, very useful indeed. We don't need the plugins because I didn't have any on there. Let's keep the sends, and let's definitely keep the IO because that's going to be very important, and I'm going to show you. Let's keep the bus number, we might as well. And then we're going to bring in these auxiliaries as well because they're going to be very important. So in this case, yes, we want to take the plugins. Let's keep the bus number. Now add that into the session. And if you're adding new auxiliaries, it's going to come up with this message just asking if you do want to add a new one. In this case, yes, we do. So click OK. And now we have all of those tracks imported. Fantastic. And what it's also done is it's preserved all of the volumes, all of the panning. It's going into the drum bus over here, as you can see. That's via bus 1. It's got all of these sends set up, which are going into my Q send setup. So this is what's going out to my headphone amp. It's also preserved the output, so that's currently going to virtual 1 and 2. That's what I chose it to do, but it could be whatever you've set up to do. And all of these input channels are correct as well. Now just ignore what they actually are, but I've changed a few just to make it look like you'd be doing a drum session. So we've got track 1 going to input 1, and then that's going to input 2. Next one is going to input 15. Next one's going to input 16. So as you can see, that can be especially useful if in a drum session you might have the kick going into track 1 but the snare is going into track 5, and then you've got the overheads which are first going into a preamp which is going through a patch bay which is then going into your interface, and you want to make sure it's going into the right channel because that's how you've set it up. It's going to preserve all of that and you don't have to go through rerouting everything, so that saves a whole heap of time. And of course this will extend to anything. It's not just drums. It might be that perhaps you've got an acoustic guitar that you have 2 microphones set up on and they're going into input 1 and input 5, and you want to preserve that and bring that in for the next session. It's all set up and ready to go for you. Now there's another reason why you might want to use this feature. For example, say you've started mixing track 1 and you've got a killer drum sound and you want to bring all of those plugins and setup over to your other songs so you don't have to keep saving each channel strip. That's great, but that is quite time consuming. You go to the same place, go up to the file browser, find a session that you're bringing the settings from, and now you can start bringing in those settings. So what you want to do is find a track that you'll bring in the settings. So kick in over here, and then in this project browser, select that. We've got a kick in as well. Choose what you want to bring in. In this case, as discussed, I want to bring in the plugins. So we're going to click that. I'm not going to worry about anything else for now because that's all I want to do, but we've gone through what you can do with the rest of that. And then this time, you don't click add, but you click replace. And now you notice that in that first track, what it's done is it's imported those plugins onto that track. Fantastic. And then for each one, you do the same thing. Definitely a lot faster than having to save each channel. Now, the annoying thing about Logic is you can't do multiple channels at once. I can't click all of my drums and then sync them up with all of these channels in the browser. You have to do it one at a time. It's really frustrating because with Pro Tools, for example, it's much more powerful in a sense that you can match all the tracks up and just choose exactly where you want everything to go, and you can do it with multiple tracks at once. So that is a little bit frustrating. I've got a little bit of a workaround for this. It's not perfect. It's not the most elegant solution, but it does work. So specifically if we're just sticking on the idea of bringing in the plugins for drums at the moment, if they're all exactly the same track and they're labeled the same, then this can work. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go to the last track there, bottom of my original drums. I'm going to go over to this browser from the previous session. I'm going to highlight all of those and select the plugins like I did before, and this time I'm going to do add like I did originally. And now as you can see, it's brought in all of those tracks. They're of course empty with no audio in them, but it does have all of the plugins. It has all of the setup that I had before. So that's really cool. So what I could do now, I think you know where I'm going with this. Highlight all the regions from what's already in your session and drag them down. There we go. And then we can just delete the previous ones. Does, however, mean that you're going to have to reset up your groups just to make sure that everything is behaving as it should. But because you've brought in those other settings, you should be able to just pick which group you're using and they'll all be back grouped again. There we go. Lovely jubbly. Now, lastly, there's not many times that you'd actually want to import the content itself from one session to another, but there are some times when you will. So 2 examples. For example, I might be recording something in my home studio and then need to go to another studio to record some drums or some vocals or something, but I don't want to take the full session. The original session might have 50 tracks in it. It's got all different plugins on it, and it could be a nightmare opening on another computer. Or if you just want to keep things nice and easy and just trimmed down. Well, this is where it can really come in handy. So if we look at this session here, this was a vocal session. So at the top, you've just got the instrumental, and then in the studio, we tracked the vocals. And as you can see, you've got multiple takes. There's quite a lot of takes there, multiple takes on each section, and you've done a load of comp in as well. Great. Now I want to bring this back into my original session, but I don't want to just go with the comp that's been made. I don't want to just bounce that out because I might want to make further changes. I want to take this whole thing and I want to make sure that I've got all of the takes and the comp in that I've done. So this is where that importing of the content will actually come in. So let's load up the other session, which I'm going to be importing it into. So this was the original session. As you can see, it's got a whole bunch of tracks in it. And now I just need to import the vocals from that vocal session. Same process as before. Go over to the browser, find the session that you're importing from, find the tracks you want to import, and then this time you choose to import the content. Add to project, and there you go, the vocals from the other session. Complete with all of the takes, all of the comps that I did in place. Beautiful. One thing you need to ensure when you do this though is make sure you have your cursor set at the beginning. That ensures that they're just going into the right place. And also just make sure that you've got the same settings in terms of tempo and time signature. That way everything is going to appear in the same place that you had it in the previous session. And that's it. So there are a few ways to use Logic's feature of import project settings. It's quite a powerful feature, so if you haven't tried it, I suggest you check it out. If you have tried it, how do you use it? Why don't you leave a few comments below and we can talk about other ways that you find it useful. Maybe I can do another video just outlining them. But anyway, that's it for now. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time.